Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hour show. I'm very honored to have an incredible athlete join us today. Scott McDermott and I met a couple months ago, and he was a host of like an event, and he interviewed me on the Blue Talks, and we hit it off right away. We have a lot in common. I'm from the endurance world, but nowhere near as accomplished as Scott. We have to talk to him. We're also going to be talking about nutrients and macronutrients nutrition because that's Scott's world and he has so much to share. So thank you for joining us today, Scott.
You're welcome. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
This is great. So I know you weren't always in like the healthcare, fitness, endurance world. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you even got into where you are today?
Sure. The short version is I got fat and sick, and then I got fit and healthy, and I was like, wait, this is better. But in high school, I got convinced by my guidance counselors to go into architecture. And I mean, I was young. I was okay. I was pretty good at it in drafting class. I get into architecture. And after 13 years of super high stress environment and having no idea how to feed my body, I people say they have a sweet tooth. I say I have 32 of them. I lived on junk food and dessert with my coffee break. I was an adult now, so I got to eat all the candy. I didn't have to, mom couldn't say no anymore and like that. And I had no idea. And I was stuck in the old 1980s trap, 1980s, 1990s trap where popular media was saying you need to eat low fat. So, okay, I ate low fat. Great. But that meant high sugar. And so I was drowning in garbage calories. And so at 29 years old, I was 230 odd pounds and no muscle mass and just a train wreck. I had ringing in my ears. I had called tinnitus. I had unexplained dizzy spells where I would just spiral out of my chair at work and not know why. And I had all kinds of circulation problems. I had broken my back in high school and I was told not to do dangerous sports because you'll be in a wheelchair and you're so vulnerable, and I bought it. So I didn't exercise and I was living on stress and working 80 to 100 hours a week to be junior partner in the firm. And I was a train wreck. I hardly ever slept. I was an absolute disaster. And I went to my doctor one time after another specialist couldn't find out what was wrong with me. And the doctor prescribed what I called a little blue pill. And I brought it home and I called my mother-in-law, who's a retired physiotherapist. And I said, Mom, can you look this pill up? This is before the internet was a big thing. This was in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still hear her voice in my head. She said, oh my, this is normally given to paranoid schizophrenics with delusional disorders who can't sleep at night. It's very powerful anti-anxiety I was like, I am not taking this.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I went back to my doctor and we had a chat and he finally did a physical that took more than a minute, if you will. And I'm not slamming doctors. They're busy people.
Yeah.
He slowed down and did a physical and asked me questions. And we came to the terms. We realized he just said, well, do you exercise? I was like, I don't have time to exercise. He says, do you eat well? I was like, I don't know. I eat low fat. Like, I don't know. And you did get much sleep? 5 or 6 hours a night. We under kind of stress? Oh, tons. And he's like, kid, you need to slow down, de-stress, get some exercise, drink some water and fix your food or you're not going to make it to 30. You're going to have a heart attack. And so that hit me.
Yeah.
That hit me hard. And I thought, okay. So I went to a gym and I joined and they gave me a video cassette of Bill Phillips' book, Body of Work, which was a mock, I'm going to call it a docudrama following 12 people from fat to fit. And I watched it and I bawled and I knew my life would never be the same again. I threw out all my junk food. I met a personal trainer. I started studying nutrition and books and manuals. I became a certified trainer. I studied nutrition relentlessly and I dropped 40 pounds of fat, put on 18 pounds of muscle. And I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. So I quit and went to work in a gym as a trainer.
That's quite a transition. And it's hard to make that decision. And sometimes people aren't ready mentally. They may be ready physically, or at least their body is knocking at the door saying, you better change. And sometimes it's hard to get that switch mentally. Now, for you, it seemed like it was a no-brainer. And you're like, okay, I got to do this. But when you took those initial steps, after you made that decision, was it still pretty hard?
Oh yeah. I just described a 12-month process in 30 seconds. So understand that it was a roller coaster. It was getting fit and all of the challenges that come with that because my world didn't subscribe to what I was doing. My best friend was furious. What are you doing? You going on a diet? You skinny little puke? Because he weighed 350. So me at 230, I was a skinny little puke, right?
Yeah.
So that was really hard. And my wife was like, we're doing what? So it was tough. So I don't try to belittle that 12-month period. It was very difficult.
Yeah.
And I worked in a gym part-time for 10 months while I still worked in architecture. But then I went to a personal development course and I realized you're at the top of the ladder on the wrong building. And I was really clear. Like, this isn't a dress rehearsal. This isn't a practice life before my real life. I'm about to be a junior partner in the firm. That means I'm not going to say permanent, but it's now long-term.
Yeah. You're stuck in there.
Yeah. And I was like, this is really scary, but this is not what I want to do with my life anymore. You know, I'm good at it, but I don't love this. And I want to do what I love. And I really loved coaching people, because it started out, everybody was making fun of me and bringing home bringing homemade cinnamon buns to try and tempt me to make me fall off course, because they thought it was funny that Mr. Sugarface was on a diet. And people are funny that way. They're like, come on, have a cinnamon bun. And I was like, nope. But I'll tell you, after a month or so, after 6 weeks, my changes started to become a little bit visible. And then people are walking up at my desk and they're like, so what are you doing? And can you give me any tips? And pretty soon I had a 6-pack. Like, I went from Pillsbury Doughboy, like massive gut, to a 6-pack. And people were like, what did you do? And my energy, I was vibrant. I was alive. I wasn't living on caffeine pills anymore. I was 1,000 miles an hour without caffeine. And people saw that. And when I was able to share it and see their lives change, whoa, that's the coolest thing. And I wanted to do that. So I went and worked in a gym, and I worked at the front desk, and I sold memberships, and I did personal training. And then I was assistant manager for a while. And then I opened my own gym. We remortgaged everything and borrowed some money from our family, and I opened my own gym.
That's incredible. And I mean, that itself is scary. Starting a business is scary. Anyone who has done that leap into the business world is scary.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you were starting to train more for the endurance world too, right? Or did that come afterwards?
It comes all together in a sense. So I had been running the gym for about, 2.5 years, actually 1.5 years. And there was an event in our town in 2004. So the gym opened in 2002, and in 2004, there was a half Ironman triathlon in our town. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. I wonder if I could finish one of those. Because I had more focused on sort of the bodybuilding structure, functional fitness and bodybuilding. So I looked pretty, and I was also really held on to the functional side of it, but it was more bodybuilding style. And I thought, I wonder if I could finish a triathlon. Like, I can not drown, right? Like, I could, if I jumped off the diving board, I could swim to the edge of the pool, right? I could do that. And I could ride the crap out of a spin bike for an hour. I loved, because I taught spin classes, right? So I could ride a stationary bike. I didn't own an outdoor bicycle, but I could ride a spin bike.
Right.
And I used to run in high school before I broke my back, but that was better now with when I got fit. What I realized is that my musculature surrounded my skeleton. And when my skeleton was supported, it didn't hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So, once I was functional, from going from fat to fit, my back didn't hurt anymore. And I thought, well, I could probably pick up running again. I used to run in high school, and I hired a coach and started training. And I did a sprint triathlon, and I was like 12th overall. And then I did an Olympic, and I was in the top 20%. And then I did the half Ironman. I was 8th in my age group, and I got a roll down spot for Ironman Canada 5 weeks later. So I doubled all my distances and did the full Ironman, which I do not recommend. That's too soon. But I was just in love with the sport. I just was like, oh, this is my jam. I loved it. Just loved it.
Yeah. And it's incredible. I mean, going through the Ironman experience, it changes your life. You start to do this training. And for those who are unfamiliar with the Ironman, so the Ironman is 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then 26.2-mile marathon run. And you have to work on integrating those 3 sports into your weekly training schedule, as well as handle the rest of your life. And that's a big commitment
It is.
that most people don't realize. And when you go and watch these races, I actually find watching these races, it's a beautiful experience because you see people of all shapes, sizes, ages. I mean, everything you can imagine you see out there. People you don't even think that you would even be able to do these events, they're doing it, and they're doing it well and strong.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that you have to consider. One is your strength, your endurance training, but also your nutrition.
Mhm.
And if you mess up on the nutrition, you can be perfectly strong, have all the endurance in the world. If you mess up your nutrition, you're done. And I have a friend who tried for a couple of years and her nutrition just wasn't right for her body. She couldn't figure out what the correct makeup was for what she should eat for her body. And
Mhm.
she had to bow out several times.
Yeah.
So, did you have any of those experiences when you were going into the Ironman and then also Ultraman?
All of them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's wonderful though, because there's so many great things about things like Ironman. Any big goal is that it really gives you pause to chase something major,
Mhm.
and that requires adapting your life to get you there. And that's a beautiful thing. It's having a great big goal. One of the things I love to tell people that I coach and stuff is you need some sort of big passionate goal where it's like taking a boat anchor and throwing it into the future and hooking it on something, and it has a rubber band tied to you and
Mhm.
it pulls you to it. And all of a sudden, when the goal is strong enough, it's like, okay, what do I need to learn? Who do I need to become to get to that goal? And you grow. How do you train 12 hours a week? Well, you figure it out because it matters. You find a way. And I was smart enough to hire a coach who had completed many Ironmans, and I learned from my coach. And so I was able to avoid a lot of the mistakes because I'm a huge fan of coaching. Why make all the mistakes? Why? Learn from somebody who
Mhm.
knows how to not make them. So
Right.
I was blessed in that way. And even still, it's a learning curve. I was
Mhm.
not a great swimmer. I was a strong cyclist and I was a decent runner, but I didn't know about proper running form, running technique, which caused injuries. I ended up after my first Ironman with plantar fasciitis, IT band syndrome, heel spurs. I had all kinds of problems, shin splints.
Mhm.
So I was a really bad heel striker with an open toe. So I had to learn how to run properly. And swimming, I swam uphill
Mhm.
because I didn't know how to kick properly and I didn't know how to pull
Yeah.
properly. So it's a huge learning curve. And you are exactly right. Nutrition is massive and we are all different.
Mhm.
My
Yes.
digestive enzymes and my gut flora are mine. So your coach can't tell you eat this brand, this many, that. That might not work for you. You might be better at burning fat, better at burning sugar, etc. So there's a bit of a learning process. And I definitely went through that process. I've had times where I was throwing up toenails at the side of the marathon course and praying to get through it and trying to figure out how. And I remember one time at Ironman Canada, I think in 2006, my second one, and I was laying on my back on the grass at the side of the road, having just thrown up, like I said, everything, just barking
Mhm.
at the land, right? And
Mhm.
laying there staring at the skies, and I heard the ambulance pop up. Whoop whoop. And they pulled up and they jumped. Are you okay? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm just tired. And I jumped up and I dusted myself off. I said, I'm good. And I started jogging off. And I was lying. I was 100% lying. I felt like death.
Mhm.
But I was like, you're not putting me in that ambulance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as soon as they drove away, I stopped and sat down and had a little pity party again. But it's
Yeah.
about standing back up and going, well, how do I keep going? And you
Mhm.
just find a way. And that's what I love about any big goal. Doesn't matter. In my case, Ironman, you find a way to be stronger than you thought you could be in a moment when you had nothing left. And you realize the human body is insanely powerful. We don't give it any credit. We really don't.
Yeah.
It is capable of way more than we think. And I love that. I love stretching into that place of uncertainty and finding strength I didn't know I had. And you mentioned Ironman is being very powerful. The first time in my life I was ever proud of myself was in my first Ironman.
Yeah.
I was going up the final climb on the bike ride, and I realized, holy crap, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get back into transition with enough time to finish a marathon for sure. And all of a sudden I just started to cry. I was proud of myself because I did that. I got myself here. And I had a crazy childhood, like many people did, with all kinds of traumas and challenges and whatever. But I was able to just move past that and just find some self-confidence. And it was life-changing.
Yeah. And it gives you strength for the future too.
Yes.
One of the things that I find with an Ironman or an ultra marathon, or probably the Ultraman as well, is I tell people, if you want to experience life in less than 24 hours, go do one of these races. You get the highs, the lows, you're sick, you're ecstatic, you love life, you miss everyone, you love everyone. It's, you get the whole entire lifespan in 24 hours. It's like a preview,
Yeah.
and it's a great experience.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge opportunity to grow because you find the depths of everything. You get to your limits and you're done. You have nothing left. You're empty. You're exhausted. You're mad. You're frustrated. You're hurt. You're all of those things. And you still have 20 miles to go. So now what? And then you grow. So many people don't put themselves in challenging situations anymore. They stay in a safe, predictable, almost predetermined situation, and growth stops.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about these big events. Like I've done a Spartan Ultra Beast, which was a 26-mile run on a ski hill with 30 obstacles per round, and there's 2 rounds. You're sprinting straight up a mountain multiple times. As hard gets. It's awesome because you learn. Okay, well, now what? I'm at my bitter end. Okay, well, I guess I got to find another gear. And you do. And every time you do.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And then when you get back to your regular life, and I ran a 15,000 square foot gym with 27 staff, and my staff would come up to me, Scott, there's a big problem. There's a big problem. I'm like, okay, what is it? Well, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, let's just do this. Call that guy. Let's get that. And we'll have to figure out how to do that. And they're like, oh, okay. Because when you're a level 10 person, a level 5 problem is just, you just fix that. But when you're a level 3 person, a level 5 problem is impossible. So it's about growing yourself to be stronger than your problems. And Ironman, Ultraman, ultramarathons, it doesn't matter what. They're a crucible. They're a practice ground.
And you even more so, because you went into the Ultramans, which I'll let you explain what that is in a minute, and you had this accident that almost killed you, and then you had to regroup and actually recover from all that too, and then you decide to compete again. So why don't you share a little bit about that, because that's even taking a next step. Besides challenging yourself, you went beyond that.
Yeah. It's a lot of amazing stuff. It really is. I was training for my 6th Ironman, I think, in 2010, and maybe it was my 5th. Anyway, and I met a fella who had competed in and completed Ultraman Canada, and he's like, his name was Nick Mallet, and he's Australian. He's like, oh, Mike, you go give Ultraman a try. And I was like, shut up, those guys are nuts. Because I had heard about Ultraman. I'm like, that's just sick. 2.5 times Ironman, forget it. And then he was talking to me. He says, well, think about it. Once you start swimming, if there was a kayaker beside you and he would give you electrolytes and glycogen of some form, it's like fuel you could keep swimming for quite a while. Like, that's pretty great. And I'm like, yeah, 6 miles is a long swim, 10K. But I guess, and he's like, well, you're a really strong cyclist. So 145K, 90 miles after the 10K swim, you could manage that. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And day 2, I was like, that's a pretty long bike. So day 1, you do a 6-mile swim and a 90-mile bike. And then day 2, you do a 170-mile bike. And it's 12-hour cutoff each day. So 170-mile bike in 12 hours over 2 mountain ranges. That's a thing. And I mean, we're talking 95, 100-degree heat. Like, it's a thing. It's possible, but you got to move. There's no fooling around, but it's possible. I'm a strong cyclist. And I was like, okay, I think I can do that in like 10 and a half hours. And then I looked at him, I said, yeah, but day 3, after you're exhausted, you're going to run a double marathon, 52 miles, 84.5K. Seriously? After you're all beat up from the first 2 days? And he goes, yeah, but think about it. He says, you can run a 3:20 marathon. I said, yeah. He says, great. So run a slow 4-hour marathon, take a 20-minute break, change your shoes and socks, have something to eat, and walk the next marathon in 7.5 hours. And I was like, oh, you're right. And I signed up the next week for Ultraman Canada. And I started training. I told my coach, I said, hey, what do you think? And he's like, all right. So we put it together, and I'll tell you, in Ultraman Canada 2011, I was 6th overall. I was 20 minutes from 2nd place. And it was my favorite race of my life. It was hardest thing I've ever done by a factor of 1,000,000. Like, it was ridiculously hard. Like, the lows were insane. I've never suffered so much, hurt so much, dug so deep, but had so much fun. And I got a qualifying spot for Ultraman World Championships. And so I went to that in 2013. I paused in 2012 because we had the birth of my son. So that was appropriate. But after about 10 months, my wife was like, could you go train again?
Go.
Could you go race again? You're not, you're broken when you're not racing, in a sense. So she's beautiful. She's wonderful. We celebrate 30 years marriage this summer. So she's awesome. She's my all-time believer in her. So I did Ultraman World Championships 2013, and I was 21st in the world. And it was the most incredible thing. It was a next level hard, because I showed up in Hawaii to the World Championships, and I felt like a kindergarten kid that was on tour at MIT. I was like, look at all these real athletes. Oh, I'm such a pretender. What am I doing here? Because I felt like these were the real deal, because they only invite 40 people in the world to the event. So just the fact that I was accepted in, I was stunned. And I just couldn't believe I was there with all these real athletes. And keeping in mind too, I'm 184 pounds right now. I at that time I was 197. So I was like, because I was a little bit more muscular then, I was bigger, and I had a little bit of body fat more than I do now. But I was huge in the Ultraman world. Everybody's 140 pounds, 150 pounds. Like, I'm racing against guys that I outweigh by 50 pounds. And they're kind of like, who brought the football guy? Like, right? Because I still had some of that bodybuilding heritage coming with me, where I was a little bit thicker.
Yeah.
And I've got short legs and a long back. I don't look like a triathlete. They look like gazelles. But what they soon found out is that I have a really ignorant work ethic. Like, I just never quit. And that was my asset. And so I did fairly well. And I thought in 2014, I do an Ultraman every 2 years was kind of my plan for a while. Because it's expensive and it's hard on the body in a sense. It's hard on your life, because it's 25 hours a week of training instead of 12. So it's harder. And we had a young child, and I had a business. And so tried to balance it out. But I wanted to go back in 2015 and race the World Championships. Now that I'd done it once and had kind of proven that I was okay to be with this crew, I belonged. I wanted to race. I thought, I want to chase top 5. So my old coach had retired. I'd hired a new coach who had been second at Ultraman, phenomenal coach, Craig Percival. And we prepped hard. And I went into 2015 super ready. And I crushed the swim. And I think I was 3 hours and 3.5 hours or something on the swim, and which is an open ocean 6-mile swim in 3-foot swells and a current against your face and salt water, jellyfish. It's a thing. And then and then you crawl out of the ocean in Kona, Hawaii, and the first thing you do is climb 1,000 feet up the mountainside. Like, welcome, like straight up in the tropical heat. And you cycle all the way up to Volcano National Park, which is uphill the whole way. You climb 7,000 feet. You go up 2,000 feet, and you go all the way down to South Point, which is almost sea level. And you go all the way back up 7,000 again. So it's a thing. And we had a tropical storm. So it's like being pins and needles in your face, and hurricane force winds and all that fun. Right. But whatever, I did it. I was 21st in the world. And I wanted to come back in 15. I wanted to be top 5. So I had this great swim. crushed the day 2 bike, or the day 1 bike course, was 14th overall. And on day 2, I was 10th overall and hunting number 9. I had just passed Gary Wang, who's been in the top 3 multiple times. I had passed Adam Fox and Peter Hudson from Australia. And I remember Peter Hudson and I having a quick little chat, and about, we've only got 90 miles left, and it was raining a little bit. We were going down a bit of a mountainside. And then I had to focus my eyes, and I went to move, and everything hurt, and it was hard to breathe. I had a monster headache, and I was in a room in a bed.
Dang.
And my best friend stood up, and I had tubes and things all stuck in me everywhere. And I was like, where in the hell am I? And Lyle stood up, and I was like, what happened? And he says, well, you crashed your bike. Oh, and my first thought was like, well, can I still get on it and finish the race? And the look in his, I know the look in his eyes was like, no. And I was like, okay. Because he was looking at me like, geez, it's good you're still alive. So I thought, okay, that's not a thing. And then I was like, what time is it? And he says, it's 7:30 at night. And I was like, 7:30? It was like noon or 1 in the afternoon. And then I kind of looked at him. I was like, what day is it? He says, it's Monday. I crashed on Saturday.
Wow.
I was like, I lost 3 days. What the hell? And so then he started filling me in on the story, and I don't have any memory of it. I remember talking to Peter, and I remember waking up. Actually, that's not true. I remember one other thing. I remember them stapling my skull back together because it hurt. I remember screaming when they stapled my skull back together. So I remember that. But we know kinetically that my front wheel slid out to the side, and it turns out, so on the bridge deck that I was going across, there's no shoulders on the bridges. And so if there's traffic coming, because it's a 2-lane highway, so if there's traffic coming, then you take the footpath. There's a concrete footpath. So we know what happened because there was algae apparently on the footpath, I was told later. And when I veered a little bit right to go on the footpath, when I corrected, my wheel slid and it hit the barricade, and I somersaulted down the path. And I was going, because I have it on my GPS, I was going about 42 miles an hour. So I was cruising, and I mean, you're wearing Lycra spandex and a chunk of styrofoam on your head. That's all you got.
You're lucky.
And I know that I put my hand down because I sprained my fingers. I sprained my wrist. I broke my left arm in half. I shattered my shoulder in 4 pieces. I broke 5 ribs, and then I somersaulted and I smashed my knee. I took a big chunk of cartilage out of my right knee. I tore my MCL, and my helmet twisted because I didn't have the strap done up properly because it bugged me. Kids, do up your helmet. Legitimately do up your helmet. So my helmet spun, exposing the back of my head, and it slammed into a concrete curb, and it shattered my skull open. So not a good thing. So I had hemorrhaging, bleeding to the frontal lobes. I had what's called diffuse axonal scarring, which is when the white matter and gray matter tear apart because your brain has been hammered so hard. And then I had obviously the big point of impact at the base. So it was a thing. It was a thing. So I woke up in the brain trauma unit in Oahu, and the Queen's Medical Center, and I had spent a couple of days in ICU, and it was a thing. It still gets me a little emotional, but yeah. So that's that part of the journey. Have a little sip of tea.
Yes, take a second. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. It's hearing you talk now. You're animated, you're smart, you're with it. It just is a testament to, one, your fitness prior to that accident, and 2, the amazing ability of the body to recover, because our body wants to heal. It wants to feel good. It wants to be strong. It wants to be functional. I mean, you're a testament to that. And so you knew, or you learned the steps to get you back to fully functional and to even race again, right?
Yeah. I did hyperbaric oxygen for 3 months to heal my brain, because I had one of the worst brain injuries you could get. And it's interesting. I have really broken, scattered memories of the first 6 months after the crash, but I do remember partly because my wife talked about it with me repeatedly after, so that it's stored. But I remember meeting with my surgeon who put the metal in my shoulder and the metal in my arm after I got back to Canada, because I was 13 days not knowing my arm was broken, and they told me my shoulder would heal. And I got back to Canada, they're like, there's no chance that heals, and your arm's broken in half. And I guess they did an x-ray high enough to realize that, because I went to my doctor, I was like, my arm really hurts anyway. So but their biggest concern was the neurology, and the neurological damage. And so I had CAT scans and deep scan MRIs, and I had a specialists help me out and stuff like that. I had to do the maze procedure, or the Epley procedure, to get the crystals back in my brain center and in my ears and stuff like that, because my balance was all off. And I'd knocked the crystals loose in my ears. I didn't even know I had crystals in my ears till I knocked them free. But anyway, I did hyperbaric oxygen. Oh yeah, right. So I was talking to my doctor and I said, how's my recovery going compared to other people? And she said, well, I have nothing to compare you to. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, according to all the medical textbooks, you should be in a vegetative state, unable to speak. So you're doing great. So I was very lucky. I don't know, guardian angels. I mean, I'd scraped the side of my face off. I had whiplash, all the things, but I did hyperbaric oxygen right away because I had slurred speech. I could only stay awake for an hour and a half at a time. It was brutal. The first few months are brutal, but I did a dive in. So hyperbaric oxygen, they put you in a compression chamber and they compress it to 1 atmosphere as if you're 33 feet below sea level. And at 33 feet below sea level, you can breathe pure oxygen, and then your brain heals really fast. And so basically you just lay there and do deep breathing for an hour in pure oxygen, and your body heals faster and your brain heals. So I did that. And then I did all kinds of breathing techniques and trying to reawaken the vagus nerve and get my body into sympathetic and parasympathetic, get it into parasympathetic healing instead of sympathetic healing. So, which I know, and my body started to heal itself. And the whole time I was super focused on getting back to racing. That was my anchor in the future that was pulling me. I wanted to get back to racing. I wanted to get well. So I made sure that I ate really good food, and I did my deep breathing exercises, and I had to meet with neurology training specialists. I had to follow the lighted pen, and I had to do charts, and I had to do all kinds of different mental games, like charts where there was row after row after row of color names, but the name didn't match the color that the name was. So it would say blue, but it was red, or it would say yellow, but it was green. And you had to say the color, not the word. And for the first while, man, because you're timed, you have to do as many as you can in 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes as your brain gets stronger. And like for the first while, it would be a minute of trying to say the color, not the word. And I would get 2 right in a minute, like 2. It was brutal. And then after a while, I got better and better and stronger and faster, and I could run without tripping. And so it was a journey to get back to good. Took a long time.
That's incredible. But you made it, and you were able to compete again, correct?
I was, yeah. So I made it back to, and again, that was a journey too. I was starting my run volume again. I had signed up for Ironman Coeur d'Alene, Idaho in 2017 as my comeback race, because in order to even apply for Ultraman, you have to do a qualifying Ironman under 14 hours, which is usually pretty easy for me. I'm kind of an 11, 12-hour guy. So, but this time it wasn't so easy. And in January, February, I kept trying to increase my run volume, and my knee would yell at me and swell up. And we're like, what is going on with my knee? And my physiotherapist was trying all kinds of things, because I was seeing physio once a week and stuff. And then I was at a convention, and we were playing this game where the leader of the convention throws hollow Easter eggs, because it was in April, out into the crowd, and they've got money in them. March, I think it was. Anyway, and you crack open the egg, there's a chocolate, and there's a $5 bill or $1 bill or $20 bill, and sometimes a $100 bill. Anyway, we're all chasing after these eggs. And I got tackled by a big guy jumping after the same egg as me, and my knee folded backwards, sideways, and out and tore. There was this big ripping noise. Wow. And then I couldn't walk. And I was like, oh, that's not good. So of course I went to emergency, and they checked a bunch of stuff out. And it turns out that when I had cartwheeled down the highway in Kona, I had torn a big chunk of cartilage, and I had torn my MCL, but they didn't diagnose that because they were so worried about the brain injury that they didn't really care. Like, his knee's full of raspberries, but it seems stable. Like, they weren't too worried. And what happened is my cartilage and my MCL healed with what's called a fibrous bridge. And so they healed as one piece. So every time my run volume tried to go up, my knee would get angry. And by bumping into this guy that I did, I actually tore them free and saved myself one of the two surgeries.
Oh,
I had
nice.
separated them.
Okay.
And then, so I met a knee surgeon and he said, oh yeah, we've got to shave off this big chunk of cartilage because it's going to lock up and you won't be able to run. Okay. So we fixed that. And I had, I think 5 weeks to train for Ironman Coeur d'Alene. And of course I got miserable and I'm an emotional eater. So I ballooned back up to 227. So I did Coeur d'Alene Ironman 2017 with a pot belly, but I finished in 13 hours and 57 minutes.
Ooh, you made the cutoff.
I had 3 minutes to spare, but I was able to apply for Ultraman World Championships. And so then 2018, I was training in earnest, and then another hiccup. I was still tripping quite a bit from the brain injury. There was like a split second delay between where my feet were and my brain knew that's where my feet were. And I would trip when I would run. So I was stumbly and fell quite a few times. We were running down a mountainside at training camp in Arizona in early March. And I put my hands down in a rocky field and I dislocated my fingers. I gloved to the ligaments one finger and folded one right backwards and folded the other 6 back. I fully dislocated two. I had to pull it back and sew it back together. And I was like, seriously, again? And that began the journey of the really deep exploration is, why, when you're doing really well, does some sort of self-sabotage thing happen and you pull the rug out from under your own feet? Like, what's going on here? And so then I started to really ask some bigger questions and talk to some psychology people and find out why, when I'm about to succeed, do I suddenly fail right out of blue? And I met a fella out of Germany called Inge Clausen, who I heard about from a couple of other Ultraman champions, because he does a lot of vagus nerve work, something called vegetative training, and reawakening the body's own healing systems and getting back to breath and proper shoulder positioning and stuff like that. So Inge was working with me on Zoom where I was laying on the floor with my phone propped up against the wall, and he was guiding me through breathing and stuff. And at one point, he's like, yeah, I can help you no more. You have to come to Germany. And I was like, I got to come to Germany? And he goes, yeah, I can take you so far here. You have to come to Germany. And so I was like, oh, and I talked to my wife and she's like, yep, I'm all in. Let's do it. We'll figure out a way. And I went to Germany and I spent a week in Kiefersfelden, and it changed my life. He really, really worked on waking up my parasympathetic nerve response, my healing response. And the changes were unbelievable. And we processed through, well, why do you crash? Why did you hurt yourself? Why did you, at the World Championships in Australia, did you lose count of the run laps and finish one lap early and get disqualified? Why all these different things? Like in high school, you won a gold medal in diving, and then you got into gymnastics and then you broke your back. Well, why did you break your back? And we broke that down into the whole psychological piece of getting your parents' attention and all of that stuff that I learned as a child, right? I love my parents, wonderful people, but stuck in their own patterns, right? They were alcoholics and they had there was all that stuff and bullies at school and all those things. And so I was still mid-30s and trying to get my parents' attention.
So during this whole journey, let's shift a little bit to nutrition, because I want to talk about macronutrients and like, how do we, like, what was your nutrition like, and how do you address nutrition, especially doing endurance events like this, and even just people who want to look at macronutrients, and kind of go into that a little bit?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I apologize. There's so much to tell, but
there is.
So through that whole process of getting back to healthy again, of course, I needed to feed my body, and I needed to feed it really well. And so you referred to macronutrients. So there are 4 macronutrients, but really 3 that matter. So there's proteins, fats, carbs, and alcohol. Alcohol is kind of a destructive macronutrient, so it doesn't really count, but it does exist. But so I had to really make sure that I was balancing, because protein is how your body repairs itself. That's building blocks, right? Amino acids, what proteins are made out of. So protein, so chicken, fish, eggs, quinoa, tofu, whey powder, that's protein. And even lots of grains and things have protein in them. So there's all kinds of different places to get protein from, but protein is how your body repairs. People think of protein as building muscle, but it also builds bones, skin, everything. We're made out of protein molecules, right? That's what we build from. And then the next macronutrient is carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are fuel. They're gasoline in the purest sense, right? Your body quick converts carbohydrates to gas. And that's why they make us feel good, because they give us energy. So carbohydrates are fruits and vegetables, because people go, I'm not eating any carbs. I'm like, oh, you're not eating any fruits and vegetables? Well, yeah, but I'm not eating any carbs. Okay, I'm sorry, but fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates. People are talking about getting rid of too many grains and too many starches. And so rice, potatoes, fruits, vegetables, that's all carbohydrates. And they are gasoline on a fire, right? That's fuel. And in the case of fruits and vegetables, they're full of micronutrients, which are your vitamins and minerals, which are so important, right? So fruits and vegetables, big thumbs up. So tons of those to help me heal. And then fat is the third macronutrient to talk about. Now, fat is really important for a lot of reasons. One, it's a slow burn fuel, and it helps regulate hormones. So many different vitamins won't work in the absence of fat, and hormones regulate with fat. And your brain is 78% cholesterol. So your brain is made up of fat. So many of your organs are made up out of fat or using fat. So fat is phenomenal. It's great. But you can also have too much of it. Like anything, you can have too much. And I think in a lot of our North American diets, we eat way too much bad fat and not enough good carbs. And it's off balance. And people don't ever get enough protein, in my experience. People are way in the basement. I coach some professional athletes and some junior champions and stuff. I've got one guy as a 14-year-old swimmer who just qualified for Western Canadians, and they're grooming him for the Olympics. And when I first started working with his nutrition, he was hardly eating any protein, and the protein he was eating was like pepperoni. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the worst kind of protein. So those are the macros. And by eating a balance of the three, that's how I was able to heal. And that's how I'm able to run optimally. That's why I'm 53 this year, and you can see my abs, because I eat well.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, how do you determine the ratios? Because we talked prior to this, and you had mentioned a couple different ratios. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how much protein versus carbs versus fats?
Well, there's one way that everybody needs to eat. No, I'm just kidding. That's complete garbage. It is 100% garbage. And so many diet plans claim such things. I am not a fan of what I call pendulum diets. So a pendulum diet, like a pendulum and a clock, right? Most people, everything's digital now, but there used to be old clocks, right? Where the pendulum did the TikTok thing. So this is a no carb diet. It's a no fat diet. This is a vegan diet. This is a whatever diet, like whatever. Every diet works. Every diet works. The human body is designed to survive, period, full stop. There are people living on only rice. There are people living on only whale blubber. You can survive. But where does optimal live? And where's your optimal? And it changes. So I'm an endurance athlete. So for me, 50% carbohydrates and 25% protein, 25% fat is kind of my zone. That's where I tend to be really great. When I'm not training for big races, I'll go 33% of each, 33% protein, fats, and carbs. If I have somebody who's not super active and they want to get great fat loss results, I usually start them on a 40% protein, 40% carbs, 20% fat, 40, 40, 20. Barry Sears did that with the zone diet. There's a bunch of different diets who played that game. So it depends. Females are different than men. I know, right? What? Yeah, we're completely different. So don't feed a boy diet to a girl. Like it's not going to have the same results, right? So if somebody's heavy into bodybuilding, I might put them on a 50% protein diet, 20% carbs, 30% fat, right? That's a little different for them. You might call that a low carb diet. It's not low, it's lower. So the answer is it depends. Depends on you. Are you male, female? Are you young, old? Are you active, not active? Do you do endurance? Do you do strength? Do you do? So it really depends. And so you have to custom tailor nutrition to who you're talking to. You can't just go, everybody needs to eat whatever.
Yeah. And I imagine too, so if you're looking at these ratios, some people might push back and say it's a little bit time consuming to do this. Now, I can imagine there's apps out there that can help you nowadays to even reduce some of the time. But what's kind of your answers when you get pushback like that?
That's a great question, and it's super accurate. So it does take time. It can. So I have 3 different ways I work with people. And this would be a bit of a shameless plug. I hope that's okay.
Sure. Go for it.
I have a 21-day nutrition reset program, which is you don't have to measure anything. You don't have to weigh anything. You just eat to the program. So I give you a big list of things to eat and a list of things not to eat. So on the 21-day reset, we bring people back to anti-inflammatory diet. We reduce the number of things that are causing the most damages. So there's no grains, no dairy, no sugar, and no caffeine for 21 days. And we reset you, right? And then after, you slowly introduce things. So that's kind of the starting point, because that's the easiest. You don't have to measure anything. Eat when you're hungry, enjoy the food. I have a 90-page manual full of recipes. Everything's delicious. So that's the easiest. Once you've done that for a while and you're like, okay, this has been good and I've had some great results, but I want the next step and I'm willing to measure a little bit. Great. Then I have a 6-week program where I can put you on different macronutrient profiles, where I have strip lists. These are your proteins and how much each your serving weighs. These are your fats. These are your starchy carbs. These are your veggie carbs. And then you just a cup of this, 6 ounces of that, cup and a half of this, that's a meal, go. And you don't have to think, but you do have to do a little bit of measuring. And then the next level is what I do, which is you use an app like MyFitnessPal, and I measure every single thing that goes into my mouth, and I have daily gram targets. So 170 grams of protein, 2,350 calories per day, 250 grams of carb. Like, I have targets to hit. The beautiful thing about working with macros in that level is, yes, it's a pain in the neck. You have to get used to entering everything into MyFitnessPal, but you get pretty good at it. And the beautiful thing is, I can eat whatever I want, right? If I'm like, because Ben & Jerry's is it's my biggest weakness, Ben & Jerry's, right?
Of course, right?
We're tight. So the Tonight Dough or Cherry Garcia or Oconada, which is, I think there's an American version of it. It's chocolate dipped waffle cones in, anyway, whatever. If I want that on a day, I put that in first. So I'll put in 1 cup of Ben & Jerry's, whatever flavor, and I'll put that in my day first. And then I can see, oh, that's going to hit my fat levels hard. It's going to hit my carbs hard. Okay. So then I need to focus on proteins that day. So then I build the rest of my day and I make sure that I hit my targets at the end of the day. And then I just go for it. Then I just enjoy the day. I just eat what it says on the thing. There's no starving involved. So you have to come to the point where it's worth it to do that little bit of work.
Right.
That makes sense.
And our health is worth it. If you want to avoid some kind of disease or chronic condition later on, it's worth putting in that effort. Just like exercise is worth putting the effort to feel good later on, be strong and avoid falls and broken bones, those types of things.
100%. And I think people think that you have to do some crazy Herculean effort with exercise to be fit and healthy. And that's just not true. It honestly doesn't take a lot. I have a free Facebook group that I do every month called the 3000 Club. And so every month we do 3,000 of something. In last month was 3,000 crunches a day, or 3,000 crunches. So it's 100 a day.
I'm sorry, do you do anything other than crunch if you do 3,000 a day?
I know, right? 3,000 a day. Sorry. It's 100 a day of something. So in January, we did 25 push-ups and 75 body weight squats, right? Because right. But now this month, the big challenge is it's 100 push-ups a day, which is tough. Now you can do up against a wall, right? Or a table or a countertop or a chair or the floor from knees or toes. And then of course there's the freaks that really want to push themselves, and they have to do hand release push-ups, which is you go down, put your hand out, tap the floor, bring it back in, and do your push-up, down, tap,
Nice.
up. So there's no cheating. So I've got all the different levels. So, but it's interesting. The average, it takes about 3 to 7 minutes a day to do 100 of something a day, but you will notice changes in 3-4 minutes a day. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to become a monster and live in the gym. That's not a requirement. But if you eat really well and feed your body the greatest stuff. I wrote a book in early 2006, I think, called If Your Body Was a Car, You Wouldn't Treat It This Way. And I always say to people, can you imagine, first of all, you're going for a 13-hour drive, right? You're going to drive a big trip, and you get up in the morning, you get in your car and you start driving, and you look at the fuel tank and it says E. Well, everybody knows E stands for enough. So you just keep going, right? No, you don't. You fill up.
Yeah.
So let's say you pulled into the gas station and you're going to get some gas because you can't run on nothing. And, oh, gas is so expensive. Oh, man. You know what? I'm not going to buy I'm going to get half a tank of the cheap stuff. And then I got some Gatorade in the back here, and I got a dozen eggs, and there's a mud puddle. I'm gonna put some water in there, maybe a little bit I'm gonna fill the tank up, but I'm just gonna put what I have. You never do that.
No.
Your car wouldn't get you anywhere, but people do it all the time. Right? They get up in the morning and they skip breakfast and they slam a coffee and they force their energy and they plow through their day on nothing. You're forcing your car to drive fast when it has no fuel in it. And then when you do fill up, you put in junk, and you're like, why does my car run so rough?
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy. So with your 21-day challenge, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? So can people join? Because you're about to start that off, right?
Yeah, actually starts Monday.
Okay.
I've got a Zoom startup call today at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So it's really fun. There's a private Facebook group. You get a daily mindset video from me every morning. So it's delivered in the group at 5 a.m., but you can watch it whenever you like. You don't have to watch it at 5 a.m. That's not my jam, but I load it every day. So you get 21 days of daily mindset videos where I cover tips on nutrition, science on nutrition, but I also really get into the mental side of it, right? How to deal with social situations, how to deal with your own mental thoughts and inner demons that aren't supportive, and how you deal with other people in life. So I have 21 videos that you get to coach you through the program. So that's all your support system. Plus it's a private Facebook group full of all kinds of stuff. And I post daily memes that are funny and helpful and hilarious and inspiring and all that kind of stuff. You get 5 or 6 or 7 memes a day. And there's the 90-page manual, which has all kinds of really great, legitimate science at the start of why a reset makes sense and how to do it properly and how to get through it. Then there's also the eat from this list, avoid these things list. There's a grocery shopping list. There's a place to make your meal plans. And then there's like 60 pages of recipes, like phenomenal recipes that I've developed over the years. One of them, my crew calls them the should be illegal muffins, the SBI muffins. They are ridiculously delicious and healthy. So it's super fun. And you get unlimited coaching from me. So people will be at a grocery store and they'll snap a picture of the ingredients list on an item and they'll, hey coach, what do you think? And I'll just give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. If it's a thumbs down, I'll say, you know what? Watch out for this ingredient and that ingredient. Instead, try to find one that has this. So you get me as a coach. I'm a 24-year personal trainer. And so it's kind of all that.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh. And if people want to reach out to you, learn more, hire you, how can they do that?
I'm pretty easy to find on scottyfit.com. So SCOTTYFIT.com. So scottyfit.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all those things.
All the social media. Well, I really appreciate your time today. This is an amazing story, amazing recovery. And thank you for sharing that, as well as their knowledge about nutrition. And thank you.
You're so welcome. I cannot believe how fast an hour goes by, but it's been great to chat.
Yes. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye now.